Good afternoon, church. So we are here at the Building the Beacon series. And I have been thinking about this a bit lately. And I've been wondering, why is it that I can't seem to make good decisions that I already know the good or bad part of? So think about this with me for just a minute here. I eat junk food rather than like a healthy meal or a healthy breakfast or something like that. And you say, yeah, but that's because like healthy food doesn't taste good. It's like kale, dry, but that's not true, is it? We actually know better than that. My wife's an incredible cook. She makes all of these wonderful healthy meals that are actually great. They're actually better than the junk. And yet I will often pick the junk. And then once you get down this line of thinking, you start to realize just how common this is. So you're busy doom scrolling rather than exercise. Go check your screen time and just take half of your screen time and put it toward exercise. You'll be doing triathlons. Right? And we know this. You will actually feel, if you just cut your time in half and exercised, you would almost immediately feel better. Just like that, almost immediately feel better. And you know that. It's not like you're coming here, you're like, ooh, I'd never thought about that before. This is brand new information for you. No one has ever told me that eating right and exercise is what I need to do. No, everybody has told us that. Right? So you're watching a TV show. It's actually lousy. This happens. I can't even understand why this happens. But Cheryl and I, we were recently watching a TV show. I think we're in season 4. And I'm like, I don't know that I like this show. Season 4, I think there's 20 episodes. We've been watching it for months. What in the world is going on? Rather than replace that with something that might be a little bit more productive. And then it gets into all of the other areas, right? You decide to kind of pick a fight with your spouse rather than talk through issues and work for reconciliation and forgiveness. A little fight here, a little picking there, and all of a sudden it's growing into this big old thing to do. And as you're doing it, there's a little thing in your head saying, hey, this sounds like a bad idea. Maybe you shouldn't do this. Do you really feel like this is going to end where you want it to end? Do you really feel like this is? So even along the way, you know that you're making a bad decision, and you just keep going. It's like, what in the world is happening? You wake up on the wrong side of the bed, which is a funny saying, because I wake up on the exact same side of the bed every single morning. And some days I wake up on that side of the bed, and I'm in a good headspace, and other days I'm a grumbler and a complainer. And so it's the same side of the bed, and depends who, and I don't actually know which is the default, because now it seems like maybe the default is grumbling, and I have to make a decision not to be a grumbler and a complainer. Well, why don't I? You know how the rest of the day is going to go. I could be filled with gratitude rather than a grumbling spirit, and yet I don't make that decision. And this is so odd to me when I really kind of reflect on it, because we're not surprised by this. We actually know the good we ought to do, and we don't do it. So, we've been doing a little bit of work over at the temple, meetings and taking some measurements and prepping some of the infrastructure and getting ready for the time when we will eventually own it and be able to move there and do all the work and all that kind of stuff. But we're kind of doing some preliminary work over there. And there was maybe this week, I forget what day it was, there was maybe 3 or 4 of us over there. And everyone's welcome to come over and drop in and say hi and get a tour of the building and all that. Just you got to make sure that we're there, because it would be awkward if none of us are there and you're asking the people at the temple to give you a tour. That would be weird. So don't do that. But if you reach out to us and say, hey, I would love to come by someday, then let's go. You can absolutely do that. Well, Pastor Girani decided that she would do that this last week, and it was really great. She knew there were a group of us over there doing some work, and so she brought donuts. And that was really sweet of her, because it's the middle of the day, you're in a kind of a slump, a little donut and some coffee, and all of a sudden we're back to the races and we're feeling all good. But the thing is, so when she showed up, Andy, and many of you know Andy Ng, Andy is a retired police officer, and she walks over and hands him a whole box of donuts. I mean, Geronimo's usually a very nice lady. I don't know what she was trying to say by handing Andy these donuts, and then Andy, we put him in the little room that we were all meeting in. I just think that was a really nice thought on her part. I don't think she intended for us to finish them all. I think there's a dozen donuts, not because she was like, hey, you guys should eat a dozen donuts. I think she brought them because that's how they sell them in the box by a dozen, and you have to have them flat. You can't put them. So anyway, at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I should bring these donuts home, all of them that are left. Not as many as you might imagine were left. And it was the second donut where I really thought about this, because I was like, the first donut was nice. It was fine. I'm not saying there was any issue with it. The second donut, I'm not even sure I was really enjoying it. I think I was just scarfing it. I think at the end of it, I was like, I'm not even sure I like that kind of donut. Why do we continue to do this? Now let's get to actual issues. You see, we know there are diminishing returns. Anyone who struggles with any sort of addiction, which is a lot of us, you know that there's a diminishing returns part of this. You actually know it because you've been around this crazy train too many times. And so you actually know that you're going to need more and more and more of something that is returning less and less value to you. And it's often at the heart of a lot of these kinds of decisions. We just continue to do things, and we're spiraling down, and all of a sudden at the end of it, you're like, I don't even enjoy the stupid TV show. And yet I continue to just mindlessly watch. Hoping what? That it gives you something different? When you get into this conversation, though, in the spiritual realm, you realize it's the same phenomenon when it comes to our souls. It's actually the same thing. If you don't know it yet, you'll learn some of the ways today and over the course of any weeks or months here at Beacon. You will learn ways to grow your soul, to interact with God in significant ways. And we often just simply don't do it. Even though we literally know we will be happier, we will be more joy-filled, we will have more peace, we will experience the very presence of God in increasingly profound ways, and we're like, nah, let me do TikTok instead. Just, why? We're here in building the Beacon. This is a generosity initiative that as a whole church, we are embarking on. The goal of it is for us to lay our hearts before God, to surrender ourselves in a more complete and full way than we have before as a community, so that we might take the resources that God provides and we might strengthen the ministries of the church, renovate the building that God has given us, and reach people that we have not been able to reach with the love of Jesus. We're hoping to do all of those things, complete all of those missions, take them further down the road through building the Beacon. That is the goal. That is the hope. That is the prayer. And as part of that, we are kicking off 21 days of a spiritual formation season. And we're going to be asking you to commit to all of this with us, to join us as we learn some of the practices and we put those practices into practice. As we allow God, we create space for God to speak to us, to lead us, to fill us with the power and the presence of the Spirit. And then before today is over, we'll be asking you to join us in a very committed sort of a way. Those are the cards that you've got sitting on your chair. Don't take them out yet. Don't worry about them yet. We're going to do those just in a few minutes here together. But to get us started, I wanted to focus on this idea of our religious practices and offer us a little bit of a warning and an encouragement, because we're about to ask you to embark on these spiritual disciplines, these spiritual practices in a renewed way, but there is a risk that we will miss the forest for the trees. And the difference that I'm talking about here is I'm calling it religiosity or walking with Jesus. Religiosity does not equal walking with Jesus. And we get to see this in the texts that we were looking at in 1 Samuel, starting in 1 Samuel chapter 10, when we're looking at the life of King Saul and his son Jonathan. The prophet Samuel said, the Spirit, he's speaking to King Saul, the Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person once these signs are fulfilled. Do whatever your hand finds to do, for God is with you. And so Samuel the prophet is telling King Saul, listen, the Spirit is going to come upon you in a unique and a special way. And when the Spirit comes upon you, just do whatever it is that God puts in your heart, because the Spirit of the Lord is going to be with you. You'll have the power of the Spirit. Now, in this season in history, God's Spirit would come upon people, and God's Spirit would also leave people. It would empower them for a task, but it would also leave them in a way that isn't the experience of Christians today. Ever since Pentecost, when Jesus promised he would leave and he would send the Comforter, now the Spirit is deposited in us, and the Spirit stays with us for the whole of our journey here on earth. And that's an incredible gift. It isn't what they had, but you can already get some of the language, right? You're going to be a different person. You're going to be changed. And then whatever the Spirit leads you to do, then go and do it. Go down ahead of me to Gilgal. I will surely come down to you to sacrifice burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, but you must wait 7 days until I come to you and tell you what you are to do. Now, this was an important distinction here in the storyline, because the people had asked for a king, but God didn't want them to be asking for a king. God wanted them to continue to follow his direct rulings under the prophets and the priests. But the people wanted to be like the other nations, and they wanted a king, and so God consented. He gave them a king in King Saul. But they wanted to still establish that part of the role that the king would have was going to be to protect the nation and fight their enemies. But the prophets were still going to be the spiritual heartbeat of the people. And so Samuel said, this is the command from God. Don't go doing anything. Wait for me to get there, and then I'll tell you what God's next step is for you. Now, Saul returned. As Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Saul's heart, and all these signs were fulfilled that day. The Spirit of God came powerfully upon him. Saul also went to his home in Gibeah, accompanied by valiant men whose hearts God had touched, but some scoundrels, we should bring this word back into normal use, scoundrels, said, how can this fellow save us? They despised him and brought him no gifts, but Saul kept silent. This is a pretty important little moment for us, because Saul is notorious for being suspicious and trying to kill anyone he thinks is a threat to him and his kingdom later in the story. This is the guy who chases the future King David all around the countryside trying to murder him. But here, when he is filled with the Spirit, he actually knows when to be silent, when not to lash out, when not to cause more trouble for himself or for the nation, even for the people who were questioning his authority. Now, when we think about this in terms of all of our own spiritual practices, this is the experience most of us point to, that we will begin to understand and know and we'll have a check in our soul as to what God would have us do and have us say and not say. And it's mysterious, but there are plenty of us here. Talk to almost half the people here, at least, will be able to give you some story where this was true in their own life. This is actually how the Spirit works in us even today. Even more powerfully, I might add, today. Now, when we move forward in the story, it says, when Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God came powerfully upon him, and he burned with anger. Now, things are about to get a little weird, because there is an enemy trying to attack Israel. And what they've been doing is they've been surrounding towns and villages, and they've been forcing them to surrender. If they don't surrender, they go and they kill everything and everyone, and they burn everything. If they surrender, they force all of the men to come out of the town and have their right eye gouged out. So it's a pretty gruesome scene. Well, that is what Saul is reacting to when it says, when Saul heard their words, this was the words of the people saying, our village is surrounded, our town is surrounded. If you don't come and save us, if the king of Israel doesn't come and save us, we're going to surrender to our enemies to save our lives, but they're going to gouge out all of our eyes. So that think about that. You'd never be able to wage war again against the incoming army, because you'd have one of your eyes cut out. So Saul takes a pair of oxen, he cut them into pieces, and he sent them the pieces by messenger throughout Israel, proclaiming, "This is what will be done to the oxen of anyone who does not follow Saul and Samuel." Then the terror of the Lord fell on the people. I bet. And they came out together as one. So just imagine this scene, right? He cuts up this oxen. He's in a fit of rage. He's sending it out all over the nation, and he goes, "I am coming after every one of your oxen, every one of your livelihoods." That's what the oxen were to these folks. "I'm going to go after, and I am going to do this to every one of your oxen if you do not stand up to this incredible injustice and help your brothers and your sisters from getting their eyes gouged out. Now step up, man up, and let's go to war." This is the same guy that remained silent in the face of the criticism of the people around him. Now he's hacking up oxen and he's sending them out across the nation. And here's the crazy part. The terror of the Lord fell on the people. God blessed this. In fact, you could say that the terror from God fell upon the people. God joined Saul in this act to raise up a mighty army so that the people of Israel would be saved. This is crazy. So what is Saul supposed to do in the power of the Spirit? Ignore his enemies or cut up an oxen and go, full crazy on them? Which is it? God honored both. We don't even have any indication that he had all this sort of specific instructions for any of this, but he didn't need it because Samuel already told him, set your hand to whatever it is that you desire to do to redeem and save your people because the Spirit is with you. This is how important having the presence of the Spirit is, and it worked out pretty darn good. When Saul mustered them at Bezek, the men of Israel numbered 300,000 and those of Judah 30,000. So they mustered up this crazy army and they went ready to go do battle against the enemies of Israel. Now, we fast forward a little bit, and it says, the people then said to Samuel, "Who was it that asked, 'Shall Saul reign over us? Turn these men over to us so that we may put them to death.' But Saul said, 'No one will be put to death today, for this day the Lord has rescued Israel.'" So now people are like, hey guys, clearly King Saul is the right king. Now we all got to follow him. We all got to fall in line. And the people were clamoring for the death of the scoundrels. We want them killed. And once again, Saul intervenes and says, no. There's going to be no murdering of the scoundrels to solidify my rule and reign. This is a glorious day for the kingdom of God. This is a good day. Scoundrels, don't worry about them. The people were clamoring. Soon, when the people are clamoring, Saul will yield. He'll fail. He'll hear the voice of the people too loud in his head. He'll hear them singing about David's exploits, and he'll want to kill King David later in the story. The people are clamoring here, and he can stand against the clamoring of the people because the Spirit is in him. But soon the Spirit won't be in him. Saul remained at Gilgal, and the troops with him were quaking with fear. He waited 7 days for the time set by Samuel. Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and Saul's men began to scatter. And suddenly the army is just withering away because they see the size of this other army, the Philistine army. It's massive. And they're intimidated. This is the story we talked about last week. And so if you want to hear that story, it'd be really helpful to kind of get the full context of what's going on here, because I'm kind of jumping around to a lot of different verses. He said, "Bring me the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings." And Saul offered up the burnt offering. Just as he finished making the offering, Samuel arrived, and Saul went out to greet him. He wasn't supposed to offer the offering. He was supposed to wait for Samuel. And he turns around and he blames everyone else. He says, what have you done?" Samuel asks. And Saul says, "When I saw that the men were scattering and that you did not come at the set time and that the Philistines were assembling at Michmash," he's blaming everybody. The enemy, Samuel, the people. Now he's in full-blown panic mode. And he says, "I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering." He was told not to, and yet he did it. Because in Saul's mind, religiosity will force God's hand. He really believes that his endeavors, offering the sacrifice, building an altar, doing these religious things will make God do something for Saul. And God's like, where do you think all of these religious activities are going to add up to moving me in a way that I don't want to go? What do you think, this is magic? You think you're a magician and you're summoning forces that you can control? He actually goes on to tell us later that the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul. And this is a key theme throughout all of these texts, that when he's walking in the Spirit, when he's filled with the Spirit, there's almost nothing that he can't do. And God joins him, and he has a sense as to what God is calling him to, and he just moves in that direction, and God blesses whatever it is. And when he is moving outside of the Spirit of God, then almost everything he does is a colossal failure, even when it looks religious. Contrast that with his son Jonathan that we did last week. Jonathan said to his young armor bearer, "Come, let's go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised men. Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf, because nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." He's like, hey, who knows? Maybe, perhaps the humility that he has in comparison to his dad. There's not all of this talk. There's a lot of words from Saul, very few from Jonathan. There's all sorts of vows and rash judgments from Saul. None of that from Jonathan. There's all of this religiosity, and for Jonathan, it's just simple obedience. God told us to go do this. Let's see. Maybe he'll meet us there. Maybe something amazing is going to happen. Religiosity will use spiritual practices, the spiritual disciplines, to try to manipulate God rather than simply drawing closer to him and dwell in the presence of God with the Spirit dwelling in us. And that's a big risk, especially if you come from some sort of religious background where we used to do things in order to make God do things. And although we don't often think this way, like we wouldn't articulate our faith this way, I have spoken with so many of you, and I have examined my own heart in this over the course of many, many years. This is how we often function. If things aren't going well for me, I will say, oh, it's probably God's upset at me because my devotional life is off. That's what this is. It's religiosity. It's the belief. Rather than simply using the spiritual disciplines and the practices to create space to hear from God, to dwell with him, to let the Spirit dwell in us, we're actually trying to manipulate the almighty creator of the universe. The big risk. Disobedience will damage your connection with the Spirit. Saul, he tries to convince him, I did obey. Later on, he's in complete disobedience. He didn't follow what Samuel had said. And he's like, I did obey. I carried out the mission that he gave me. Samuel replied, what is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your religiosity, or your obedience to his voice? Listen. And that's what we're hoping you do, that all of us do over the course of this 21 days, that we will listen and we will obey. Obedience is better than sacrifice. Submission is better than offering the fat of rams. Rebellion is as sinful as witchcraft, and stubbornness as bad as worshiping idols. As part of building the beacon this 21 days, we are asking you to commit to tending to your souls. Now, there's a great book. It's from John Mark Comer. It's called Practicing the Way. This is an amazing book. It largely goes through some of the traditional sort of historic disciplines, and it's a great place for you to get started. If you haven't really done this in any significant way, this would be a great tool to kind of frame some of these ideas for you, and it's where a lot of our own sort of structure and ideas come from when we're talking about spiritual practices. He actually lists a whole lot of different kinds of things that we can practice. Sabbath. This, to me, is probably one of the most elusive. I've probably tried Sabbathing more than almost any of the other disciplines and consistently fail, which is a great way to reveal some of my own sin issues. If this is one of those areas that I struggle with, there's probably a sin issue that still has dominion over my life, which I could tell you about, but it's actually embarrassing, so I won't. No, I'm just kidding. I will. It's actually because I am completely dependent on myself in so many ways. And Sabbath is actually designed to make you dependent upon God, and not your own strength and creativity and hard work and all of that kind of stuff. And so it's very uncomfortable for me. And whenever I practice it, I experience more of God's joy. And then I quickly struggle and I move away from it again and again and again. I'm in a terrible season of it right now, actually. So solitude, another great one. This one I developed around the time we were starting Beacon, and it actually did transform my life. I'll talk about a little more of that maybe next week. Prayer, often called the queen of the disciplines. Fasting, another discipline I have continued to struggle with over the years, but we're going to be doing it together as a community. Scripture, this is one I absolutely has been an encouragement to me. I've just loved the scriptures to read them and study and understand them over the years. It's been a huge source of encouragement. And if I'm ever feeling discouraged, I usually return to the scriptures and I just read. And I just listen and I read and I listen and I feel God's pleasure in my soul. Community, lots of ways of doing this. We're encouraging you to get involved in a small group or a discipleship group or something because we're meant to do this together. Generosity, that's a whole big part of the initiative that we're talking through anyway, and that'll be a recurrent theme. Service as well, and that's a time, talent, treasure thing. Witness, hospitality, how do we share our story? All of these are just some of the traditional, classic kinds of spiritual practices that we are going to be inviting you into over the course of the next 21 days. And how we're going to do it is based on a prayer guide and a little commitment card. But we're going to let Pastor Max has actually been writing a whole lot of this for us. He created all of this campaign as a part of building the Beacon, and we're going to let him explain it in his own words. Maybe. With volume.
Excited to start this spiritual journey with you, and you. Well, the hope is that we seek God's face, of course, and hopefully have a personal encounter with God, something unique and undeniable, so that it changes how we see Him. Hopefully we gain some kind of clarity on what giving and sacrifice means personally for us in this season, and not out of pressure, but more out of a personal revelation. Well, in scripture, every great move began with people seeking God first. When Moses was met on Mount Sinai before leading Israel, David, when he always sought God's guidance before every battle, and of course, Jesus often withdrew to pray before choosing his disciples and even before the cross. So seeking God, it aligns our hearts with his plan and gives us the strength to carry it out. One of my favorite scriptures in Ecclesiastes, it says, a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. And we can accomplish so much more together as a church than we ever could alone. So the journey's not just about a building, it's about what we're building, which is each other. The best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago, but the next best time to plant a tree is today. And that's what we're building the Beacon represents. It's planting now so that future generations can stand in the shade that we're building later. So you're not just part of history, you're part of eternity. And every prayer, service, generosity during this initiative, it matters. And in heaven, we'll see how every seed that we planted became part of God's bigger story that he used for his glory. A boy once asked his father how big God is, and the father pointed to an airplane high in the sky. And the boy said, "It's tiny." And then later the father took the boy to the airport and he saw all the planes up close and he says, "Ooh, they're huge." So the father said, the closer you get to God, the bigger he is to you. And his size depends on how close you are to him. And sometimes, especially on this journey, sometimes we hesitate because we think God is upset with us or he can't possibly love us because of our shame. But scripture says otherwise. In Hebrews, he reminds us that I'll forgive all the wickedness and remember your sins no more. It's almost like he doesn't even remember, which is a blessing to us. So on this 21-day journey, it's your invitation to move closer to God to see how big and faithful he really is.
So on your seat there is a Building the Beacon 21 days, right? Max was amazing. And he has been working through this and creating this for us. And so the band is going to come out, and I'm going to walk you through just a couple of these next steps for you. You see this 21 days all-in devotional guide. This is your daily prayer prompt. So if you see the first one starting tomorrow, Monday, October 13th. And so we're literally asking you to join the leaders, the staff, me, my wife, as we walk our way through this for the next 21 days. And you'll read a chapter, you review John 1:39, take a look at the reflection question, pray, Lord, what do you want to show me in this season of building the beacon? Write out one phrase that comes to mind. And so when you look at something like this, we're going to be asking you not simply to pray, but to create space to listen. That might be a little bit of a newer experience for some of you. I want to encourage you to really press into it. Don't worry about the distraction. Don't worry about your mind racing. As it races and you kind of lose focus on it, just gently bring your mind back. Don't beat yourself up. Don't go crazy. Just gently bring your mind back to the prompt and use that as the way to reflect. Now, on top of this, you will see a card here. This is the 21 days all in. It's the perforated card. And the way we're going to work this is we're going to give you just a couple of minutes to reflect. The band is going to be playing. You're going to be just reading through this and following God's prompting in your soul. This is a discipline in and of itself, a spiritual practice to create space to hear from God. And this is a legit commitment, meaning you're going to go through here and let's say you decide to join us on building a bridge. So you mark build a bridge and you mark the next box, which is commit to following our 21 days all in devotional. Are you guys able to read it? Is it a little too dark in there? Or are you able to read it? A couple of you are like, I can't see your flashlights. All right. Then on the next one, 1 minute, one spirit. You can do every one that you're committing to. Mark both boxes because you are going to rip this card. You're going to perforate it. And then you, in just a couple of moments, you're going to come up and you're going to drop the smaller part in the one with your name and phone number in the basket up here. And this will be your act of commitment, your very first act of commitment for building the beacon. You're going to be agreeing to join us in this. And we're going to collect these cards. We're going to be praying for you over the duration of the 21 days. We're going to be joining you in these very same disciplines. And for everyone, you can mark every single one if you've really, but be serious about the ones you really think that you will be able to commit to and do. And then after you are ready and after a couple minutes goes by, just come on up, drop it in the plate, in the basket up here, and then take the communion elements back to your seat. And after this, we're going to celebrate the Lord's table together in just a few minutes. So take a couple of minutes, prayerfully consider, rip the card, bring it up to the basket, and then grab the communion elements.